All right, I think whenever it's good for you, we can wrap it up and go.
I couldn't not end it that way.
Sorry, you were still hot for 1 second there, but yeah, we okay. It ended beautifully. So perfect. I thought that was spectacular.
I'm glad you dug it. Thank you. Thanks for letting me play a little bit.
Oh, I think that was spectacular. Hello, and welcome everyone to In Time. My name is Nicholas Lamar Soutter, and with me today is Christopher Maute. Christopher, how are you?
I'm doing quite well. Can you hear me all right?
Oh, yes, sir, we can. So we did. Of course, we did have the music at the beginning was, of course, intentional. We still had it wouldn't be in time if we didn't have a brief hot mic segment, but that was Christopher himself playing for us, jamming out a little bit. So thank you, sir.
Super fun. Thank you for letting me jam for y'all.
Oh, that's my pleasure.
Always relish the opportunity.
Yeah, well, so today, this is actually something I've been wanting to do for a very, very long time because it's something we never really think
Yeah,
about. But yeah,
I want to get your thoughts on this. Also, everybody who is listening, hello. Thanks for checking it out. Even if it's a small crew, we want you super involved because I think
yes.
I know what music is. It's going to be very different because I teach it. I teach psychology and music. It's going to be very different than what Nick's going to say. Probably. There's going to be overlap, right? But I definitely want to know what your guys and girls and other people's answers are to the questions that we're going to be bringing up, because this is a super fun topic that I know everyone has an opinion about, and I want all of those opinions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'll be keeping an eye on the live chat. I'm going to let you do a lot of talking. I'm going to be keeping an eye on the live chat, and I'll be putting some questions up, and we can talk about it. I mean, for me, one of the biggies, because we don't think about this. So the big question, what is music? And people said, well, what do you mean when you ask what is music? Well, what is it? A music that I can tell doesn't actually really exist in nature. There are sounds that we find pleasing, and you could sit there and listen to a waterfall and say, okay, I really like that waterfall, but it's not. Uh, you don't hear a symphony in the middle of you don't just go wandering through the woods and then start hearing a symphony. You don't hear music naturally in nature. These patterns and rhythms that we like, and I've heard it said that part of this has to do with the human heartbeat. When you're the fetus hears a human heartbeat, so a lot of music, especially with a good bass, with drums, is the timing. The closer you get to a heartbeat, the more you can get somebody really revved up, and maybe that makes a little sense to me. But on the flip side, still, even in utero, you're not necessarily listening to or exposed to music unless that's what unless your mother's in a room that has it. So we have this thing that moves us, that inspires us to, and we have that intro, which I love the music to that intro. And there are people who just start dancing when they hear that intro. Courtney, when we start the intro, she's always in the back. She just starts dancing like she just can't. So what is it? There's just this combination of sounds that is having an impact on us, and that we can all sort of agree. And here's the other interesting thing, and then I'm going to pass it on because I really want to hear what you have to say about this. But there is one. Anthropologists studied what do we have that's common in every single human culture that has ever existed. A few things. The concept of joking. So just the jokes have always existed. The idea that you can be funny by either being in juxtaposition or, unfortunately, in some cases, by the suffering of other people. They say comedy is a tragedy from the other side of the street. Tickling is another one. This deriving this pleasure from. So there have been a few, but one of the other interesting things is in every culture, no matter how they make music, no matter what kind of music they have, human beings almost universally can tell the difference between, even if they don't know what the difference is and can verbalize it, they can tell the difference between chords and or notes that are harmonious versus dissonant. And universally, human beings don't like the dissonant ones. It's just something that something about how we work. So we put it into patterns, and we create these patterns, and then we go, hey, we like it, and it can influence our behavior. We get pumped up. We can. Hey, you're listening to the wrong music. You start driving too fast to do stupid things. So what is it? What is music, and how is it having this impact on us? So here you are, and I was hoping you might have some insights for us.
Well, I put it out to the audience to answer as broadly as you can. What is music to you? And, try to keep it nice and pithy. Throw it in the chat while I kind of lay out some super duper basics. All right. Music. Let's agree that music is organized sound. Is there any way to disagree with that as a starting point?
I think no. I don't think that makes a lot of sense to me. So that it's sound that is organized, not necessarily all organized sound, but sound that is organized in a specific way. I can imagine you could organize sound. Yes. Okay, I think yes.
With intent. And of course, people have taken advantage of this. I don't remember the composer's name. It might be Philip Glass, or it might be the other abstract composer whose name I cannot think of right now, but they have a composition, and I forget the name of it. I think it might be called like 2 minutes is the name of the composition, and it is 2 minutes of rests for a quartet. So it's a string quartet just reading rests for 2 minutes, and that is the music. That is the organization of sound that the composer intended, as abstract as it is. Of course, this is more contemporary, what is called art music. It's not called classical music so much anymore, except for the literal classical music, but the stuff that's composed for chambers, that's written recently, that's called like art music, like chamber art music. So that being said, it's organized sound. But it's not just any organized sound. So you have to think of like, what are the variables that go into music? But before we even go into those, let's see. I want to see what everyone has to say here.
Tony Designs is talking about dancing to the sound of surf on an empty beach before Stone Cold. So yeah, I didn't need that imagery. I don't know what he's okay.
I think I think you should dance like nobody's watching. So things are buffering every 5 seconds, they're saying.
Yep, yeah, and I'm on that. I have figured out what there is a specific cause, and I have isolated the cause and dealt with it, and so hopefully things will improve significantly.
Okay, very good. Sorry, just want to make sure you got that.
Thank you.
A really lousy way to make your living, Miss Shadow Kitty says. I totally agree.
Yeah.
I have super fun stories. I went to Hollywood, California when I was 18 years old in the hopes of making it. I had hair down to here, and that was 1989 at the height of Whitesnake and Guns N' Roses and Warrant and hair metal, and I was right in the thick of it. So yes, music is a language, says Peter. I think that's controversial.
I do want to, and I want to get into that. But what's just to piggyback on that for a second? What do you call a musician without a girlfriend?
Without a girlfriend?
Yep. Homeless.
Bass player? Oh, homeless. What do you call somebody who hangs out with musicians?
What?
A drummer.
A drummer. Ooh, okay.
Oh yeah.
So
don't get me started. There is a whole treasure trove of musician-specific jokes that I could just start throwing down. So anyway, hold on a second.
So yeah, we had a couple of good ones. So I didn't mean to. Music is a language was one that somebody said, and you said that's
music is a language. I think that's very controversial. Let's see. Music is pleasure. It's fantastic. Frank Zappa has a wonderful quote. Let me see if I saved that. I must not have. So let me quick look this up. We get started off with this. So music is obviously moving on. Music is organized sound, but what do we do with that sound? And what kind of sound is it? Here it is. According to Frank Zappa, information is not knowledge. Knowledge is not wisdom. Wisdom is not truth, and truth is not beauty. Beauty is not love, and love is not music. Music is the best. Right? So that's Frank Zappa, avant-garde rock and rollster. And we need to make a distinction. Obviously, I'm going to approach this from a psychological perspective, right? Because it's very, if a tree falls in a wood and nobody's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound kind of thing, right? To your point, music doesn't exist in nature unless there is a mind to organize it in a way that it can be perceived as music, right?
Yes.
There is a distinction when talking about these things in what is music, and that's very difficult to study from a psychological perspective because it's ever changing, right? Just even in popular culture, year to year, every 5 years, every decade, music is a moving target. So it's very difficult to pinpoint what it is at any given time, other than it dips into these very specific variables that we can talk about, right? But the thing that's most interesting from my perspective isn't music itself or studying music itself, although I see value in studying music. I'm a trained musician. There's another component called musicality. Musicality is the propensity in humans to perceive the elements of music, unify them as the whole that we perceive as music, and for it to have the effect on us, right? We can't perceive pitch unless we have the mechanism of action that allows us to perceive pitch. That's musicality. Otherwise, it's just sound waves. Right? Sound waves is the foundation of sound, right? Or waves are the foundation of sound. And as those waves hit our ears, we perceive it as the sound that we do. But there's two kinds of sound, right? There are sounds that are based on a fundamental frequency, which we normally use in music. And then there are sounds that aren't based on a fundamental frequency. And that's like a waterfall or static, white noise, pink noise, gray noise. Those kinds of sounds that don't necessarily have, and this is kind of getting into physics, a very little bit, acoustics, a fundamental tone upon which its sympathetic vibrations is literally building a scale of harmonics in very specific intervals. And that is what, at least in Western culture, we are using as our notes for pitches across octaves. Now, if what I said doesn't make sense because you don't have any musical training, allow me to go through it one more time using less technical language. The last thing I want to do is jargon bomb. Okay. So, in the real world, there are wavelengths. Some of those wavelengths just sound like noise, like a shh sound, or any other kind of what we consider non-harmonious sound. But there are some sounds, the human voice being one, that is based on a fundamental tone where harmoniously sympathetic vibrations give you what's called an overtone series, right? And those sounds are perceived to us as very specific pitches. So frequencies in the outside world are pitches on the inside world, such that the more frequent a waveform is oscillating, the higher we perceive its pitch. Allow me to demonstrate. A dissonant sound that's not really based on any frequencies would be something like this. It's just noise, right? But even that had overtones of actual pitches just because I'm actually doing it on strings. So I'm just trying to get like this. This kind of noisy nonsense is noisy nonsense. We don't usually make music out of that, but it is sound, and contemporary composers do use it. This, on the other hand, has a fundamental frequency such that, physics being what it is, this open string, oops, if I cut the length of this string in half and play that, it's the same note an octave higher. And if I split that distance in half again, it's the same note an octave higher. And all of those frequencies in between make up the scales and chords that we use in Western music. And I would give you the logic and the physics, but that's way beyond this particular hang. And also, you could Google it. They have like very awesome graphics that demonstrate how this works. Because it's not like the overtone series literally goes like, but those notes are derived from what I mean? So all of those frequencies are just built onto that one string. And then never mind, use that across what we consider the 12 tones in an octave, and then the span of octaves that we can actually hear. And you just have this, they line up beautifully. It's the reason why this sounds harmonious in a way that this potentially doesn't, or is less harmonious. People don't really want to listen to that unless it's an abstract piece of music or like some kind of rhythmic thing going on, right? You can make music out of it. But, so that's essentially what music is. Music is consonant sounds that are built on a fundamental frequency, organized with intent. And in Western music, this thing that we call an octave, you can recognize that that is the same note, but it's just in two different levels of frequency. This note is oscillating twice as fast as this note. That's why they sound the same, but they're at different pitch levels. And we call it an octave, and that's deceptive because octave means 8. That is a total Western-centric way of thinking about music. The reason why we call it an octave is because most of our scales have 7 notes, and then the 8th note is the first note up an octave, 8 notes oct. But in reality, this octave is split in a bunch of different ways in a bunch of different cultures. But for the sake of today's discussion, we will just stick to those 12 notes between an octave. So I'm not gonna put this away. I'm just gonna put it down on my lap in case I need it again soon. So that's the most general definition of what music is, but I don't want to get too much more technical than that. What I want to know is the root note. You know, Reed seems to be very good. Octaves. Reed seems to be some sort.
You had a couple good questions. Michael Westby also said, let's see, which is more important, intention or organization? That's an interesting question.
I would say delivery, right? You can have an intention for a great song, but if you can't deliver it, either technically or because of lack of creativity, then your intent doesn't mean anything. Right? Also, there is an argument about who gives a shit what the intent is. I get from music what I get from it. And if I get something from it that you didn't intend, then tough shit. I listen to it for why I listen to it. This is also an argument against music being a language. If music was a language, the person, the composer who had the intent, who was encoding information, would encode it in such a way that it would be decoded in the same way that his intent was meant. And that's not the case with music at all. I could write a song that is about a very personal experience that is bittersweet and horrible, and you perceive it as this something else altogether. Are you wrong for perceiving it that way? Do I have control over how you perceive my intent?
I don't know how far I want to go down that rabbit hole, but I will say this. Like, you know, so you and I will be talking, and I'll go, oh, Maute, you're such a son of a bitch, man. You're such a son of a bitch. And people who don't know us might misread the intent of that and might actually hear something different. In fact, they may take that quite literally. So I think language is actually subject to the exact same interpretation and problems of what are people getting. Language is extraordinarily imprecise and very difficult and very much in the eye of the beholder, just like music would be my argument. You know, you and I...
We can stretch out from that, right? Just basic theories of meaning. Meaning is usage within context, right? It's the difference between you literally being mad and calling me a son of a bitch versus mock anger, where son of a bitch, calling me a son of a bitch now is funny. It's the same usage, different context, different meaning, but it's easier with language than it is with music. Music is better for changing the context. So I want to put that out to you. Think about the troubadour. The troubadour was just telling awesome stories and had music as a way of like making the dramatic parts more dramatic. When it was sad, they would go minor. When it was happy, they would go fast and major. It was just meant to pull your emotions along with the story that was being told. And, you know, from my perspective, that is kind of the origin of popular music, or like songs the way that we understand them now. The good songs, the ones that tell stories, right? But Where was I going with that? This is stories,
Uh,
troubadours. Oh,
uh,
I don't think that music is able to have that kind of precision the way that language does, right?
mm,
I can
mm.
be sarcastic in music, though. There are some similarities, right? So if I'm in the middle of playing something, right, and I throw this in, right, if I'm going like, and I'm at a gig, and you walk in, and I go on the mic, hey, Nick, what's up? I'm being sarcastic with you with my music. I'm saying nenny nenny boo boo to you through my music. I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
Or if like something weird happens in my environment while I'm playing, I can be like, or I can mimic laughing. Right? Or if something else happens, you know, like depending on the theme, I call this Mickey Mousing. Because in Mickey Mouse, when you see a waterfall, it's always accompanied with right? Isn't that the sound of water falling to some people?
Yeah.
It's that scale combined with those intervals, combined with it descending, water falls, notes are falling, descending. That raises another question. Why do we have these spatio-temporal relationships with music? Descending scales usually denote depression. Ascending scales usually are invigorating and moving upwards, you know, as far as like bodily things go. Some would say there's an evolutionary explanation for this. Obviously, our environment is giving us a lot of auditory information. And some would say that because our mammalian ancestors were nocturnal, that they relied much more on their sense of hearing than on anything else. So this is one of the reasons why timbre, as well as pitch, are very important. If you're not familiar with what timbre is, think of it as the quality, right? So this note is the same as no, but you can tell it's the same note, even though when I sing it, it's a different timbre than when I play it. This doesn't sound like note. They're the same note, but the timbre is so different that you can tell that's the one that Chris is singing, that's the one that's the bass playing. We're sensitive to timbre because timbre is a way of reading our environment with our ears, such that things that are fast pulse, high pitched, mean something different than fast pulsed, low pitch. That's stampede, right? Fast tempo, low pitch is get the fuck out of the way, right? Harsh timbre, like means something very different than right? And I know I'm making an ass of myself by making these sounds, but from an evolutionary perspective, that we can tell the difference in these timbres. One of the theories that connects music to having an evolutionary significance is the way that we talk to our children, because it is now called infant-directed speech, but it is super duper musical, right? I hope that nobody speaks to adults the same way that they speak to infants. And I also hope that you don't speak to infants the way that you speak to adults, right? You know, pick up a baby and it's like, oh, look at this little baby. The dynamic range of how you're talking is so sing-songy, it immediately orients the infant's brain to pay attention, right? And some would say these are the beginnings of this musicality that I had brought up earlier. What allows us to think that to put these elements together? Well, one is how our parents speak to us when we're infants. So that we can pay attention to those soft sounds, meaning soothing good things. We're one of the only species, if not the only species, that can use sounds to soothe from a distance. All other primates require touch and tactile stimulation in order to quell the cries of their infants. Humans are able to do it with sound.
Wow, that's interesting.
Right?
right? I came fully loaded.
No. There's a reason we're going with you. And I think that actually, in my view, again, sort of speaks precisely to the topic. What is music? It's clear we have a connection with sound that we don't, and our eyes are, I think, irrefutably our single best sense. We rely on that sort of the most, but we do often underestimate how connected we are with sound. And I mean, even if something startles you, if you hear a startling sound, poof, all of a sudden your heart gets right. I mean, you can get very triggered by sound very quickly, and different sounds do have an impact. I think that's sort of what you just said there is we definitely have a connection to sound that most have. There are animals that have better eyesight than we do, and there are animals that hear better, but there doesn't seem to be that many animals that have the connection to music that we have.
Can I give a demonstration?
Please.
So, speaking of musicality, one of the underpinning mechanisms that allows our brain to understand music is the understanding of relative pitch. I'm going to, again, try not to use super fancy words, but I will use demonstrations. Are you drinking a fucking energy drink again? Oh my God. Nothing. No more comment than that. No more comment. I never forgot what the fucking point I was making.
Relative pitch.
Relative pitch. Okay. So
one of us is paying attention.
This, I know. Give me a goddamn break. If I were to play this, what is that?
Happy birthday to you.
Okay. What is this?
Also, happy birthday to you.
I played those in two completely different keys. None of those notes were the same. Yet, you were able to perceive it as the same thing. There have been studies done on... Is that my mic? There have been studies done on birds where they are trained to adapt to an ascending series of notes. Something like this. And when they heard that series of notes, they were trained to peck on a button, right? Simple behaviorist paradigm. And when they heard a descending pattern, they were not to peck on the button, right? Now, if this learning were to be generalized, you would think that would also generalize, because we also recognize this as this. Again, not because the notes are the same in an absolute sense, but their relative distance from each other are the same. And we perceive that inherently, automatically, reflexively, and instinctively. Birds, if you go, the thing that they were trained on, they peck the thing. The thing they were trained not to peck on, they don't do anything. You take that same exact paradigm and shift it one half step, they're confused. It's like that is nowhere close to the very thing that they were trained on, where in reality, it is just the difference between and. You can hear that is just a pattern going from here to here. Birds can't. Songbirds can't. Consistently. The primate literature is a little bit more complex because there are some demonstrations for and some demonstration against their ability to understand relative pitch. So that's just like a fun little example about how you have a superpower that you didn't realize that you have as a human. This basic understanding of what relative pitch is.
Yeah.
So now I want to throw a complete curveball at you. Okay, hold on one second. Somebody's throwing music at me.
You're getting a lot of... Yeah.
A minor, B, C minor, C. Oh, he's just going up the scale. I thought that was a chord progression for a song. Anyway, yeah, Reed obviously knows what he's doing. I love it. So I am under the impression that there is no evolutionary significance to music. I think that it is auditory cheesecake. I think that music has all of the elements of things that we have adapted for through natural selection without music itself being the target of natural selection.
Hmm.
What do you think about that? See the smirk on my face right now?
Yeah, I do see it. I think that strikes me as an interesting position. There's enough wiggle room there that I could see it defensible, but it's one that I certainly don't know enough
Wiggle
about.
room?
Yes, wiggle. Well, yeah. Essentially, what it sounds like you're saying is so nature has not selected for music, but
Specifically.
yeah. So now there are plenty of traits that we get, and this is a more nuanced understanding of evolution. There are traits that we get that nature hasn't selected for. So this isn't a brand new concept, but of course, sort of the way I learned evolution is either we have something that's a holdover from our evolution, or something that was specifically selected for, one of the two. So I think what you're saying makes sense, but it still also is a little new to me, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's meant to provoke, right? It's meant to be thought-provoking because, I mean, think of it. Why would it be called auditory cheesecake? Well, there's nothing evolutionarily significant about cheesecake, but its ingredients we have evolved to find appetitive. The creaminess, the fattiness, the sugar, the saltiness, especially if it has that nice graham cracker crumb crust, a little bit of salt, a little bit of sweet, a little bit of fat, boom, you got everything that you need. But there's no friggin' cheesecake tree that, anybody grew up near that they needed to adapt their taste buds to. It just has all of the things that we have adapted to. All the things that were a target of evolution are hacked to make cheesecake sound so good. That's what music is.
To make cheesecake sound so good. Okay. I like that analogy. I like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can and you could break it down into its elements, right? So there's the linguistic component, right? There is a very specific rhythm and pattern to the way that people speak from culture to culture. That in and of itself makes you sensitive to following certain patterns and rhythms. And usually culture's music reflects vocal patterns. That's just, we could talk about that, but this is one of the rare times where I'm going to say, take my word for it. Because we could just go down so many rabbit holes with it, right? Because the studies are European and it's mostly French versus German, and it's not fun. It's not fun research.
I'll take your word. Oh, yeah.
Cultural music and vocal patterns are linked.
We'll bring you back. We'll bring you back, and we'll do an entire episode just on that. But until then, I'll take your word for it.
That sounds like torture. Torture.
If it's going to torture you, I'm much more inclined to do it. Admittedly, I would sit through that. So.
And also think about the vocal component of the prosodic envelope, which is what makes our emotions emotional, right? Think about Charlie Brown's teacher. Wah, 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 wah. You don't know what they're saying, but you know what mood they're in, because when we are angry, we are forcing air faster through our vocal cords. That makes the timbre more harsh. So we are aroused, fast heart rate, adrenaline coursing through our veins. Our voice sounds a very specific way than when we're calm or when we're depressed, right? All of those vocal cues of your voice going down when you're depressed and going up when you're aroused, those contribute to making music what it is. Because through music, as I demonstrated, I can make my bass laugh. I can also make it do a bunch of other cool little emotion-y things, right? Those Mickey Mouse tricks that I was talking about, Mickey Mousing. So there's those two factors, the straight up linguistic, because there is a pattern, there's a pulse, because music is organized sound usually over a beat, which is a rhythmic pattern over a steady pulse, right? A pulse is just exactly what you would think it is. Any consistent, predictable rhythmic pattern. And
So there's those components, the emotional thing, and then there's the timbre component, right? We are sensitive to harsh versus smooth timbres. So just those three elements by themselves, the linguistic part of language, the emotional part of language, and our sensitivity to timbre, it already sounds like a pretty good cheesecake already.
Yeah.
Right. And another analogy that he uses is it's a evolutionary spandrel. If you're familiar with spandrels, between arches, there's this area, and it doesn't have a function, but architects had a goal of beautifying everything. So these spandrels became like a focus for artists to beautify, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just a byproduct of having two arches next to each other, but they were valued for just being a byproduct, right? So that's kind of an explanation for what music is to evolution. It's a spandrel. It's a leftover. Evolution happened, and this fell between the cracks and is valued and glorified for some reason. Not fell between the cracks. That's not appropriate. But existed as a byproduct of it.
So just let me interrupt really quickly. What is that in your background right there? I just want to get that clear. Was that your wife moving? Something moved in your background, right over your right shoulder.
My right. Oh, no, that's Jaden.
Yep. Oh, okay.
That's my son, Jaden. Why were you going to? Oh, geez. Yeah, try to sneak those sips in. That's just going to kill you, brother.
I'm aware. I go through periods. Sometimes I'm not usually an energy drink guy, but there are times I go through periods where I'm drinking. Yeah, I don't even want to. Okay, a $5 super chat from Reed. Reed, thank you so much. Run through the axis of awesome and the four chords. What does that argument make hit after hit? Why does that argument make hit after hit?
Do you know what he's talking about?
I haven't a clue. I was hoping you did. It sounds like you do. And we've had okay.
In music, especially popular music, it is based on a very simple formula, and there are many songs that follow that formula, more than you could possibly imagine. Now, I don't want you to get a copyright strike, so I'm going to have to try to demonstrate this without actually singing the songs. But it's this chord progression, right? It's a blues.
Chris, do not worry about it. Play whatever you want, and I mean this quite sincerely. Play anything that you think will. Don't worry about it.
Really?
Yes. Usually, what they will do, they will demonetize the episode. That's fine if they do that. I'm perfectly cool with that. Do what they won't. They won't strike the channel for them. No. We'll get a hit on the. It happens all. Don't worry about it. Do whatever you want to do.
Okay. So I don't know which one Reed is referring to, because there's a 3-chord version and there's a 4-chord version. The 3-chord version is just the blues. Starts on, this is considered the 1. Use the appropriate names, and I will expect your context cues to understand what I'm saying, at least, associatively. So here's the 1. 1 again. Now it goes to the 4 chord because begins on the 4th note of the scale I'm in. Then it goes back to 1. Now it's going to go up to the chord based on the 5th note of the scale. 4, 1. That sounds very familiar, right? Because it is essentially 1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock, 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock, 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock, we're gonna rock around the clock tonight. Dun, 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 dun. It is also every other 50s song, like or the same chord progression is same chords. Like you could probably throw like Wanted Dead or Alive in there, or I Always Have to Steal My Kisses from You from Ben Harper would be a contemporary version. I always have to steal my kisses from you. I always have to steal my kisses from you.
So those three chords are doing a lot of work. They're doing a lot of heavy lifting in popular music, right? So that's what I think Reed is talking about. And there is a comedy act called The Axis of Awesome that is kind of a play on the old school Axis of Evil, George Bush days. That's how old this guy.
Really? Please don't. No, don't call that old. That's not old. Can we say it's?
Oh, I don't. It's classic.
Okay.
So they run through like 15 minutes worth of songs in the same key with those chords, and nothing changes except like the groove and the lyrics and melody. So it's just a fun demonstration of how pragmatic those are. 12-bar blues, Daryl Frost, you got that right. Play that funky music, white boy. Oh, don't get me started, Ry-Raz. I do it. Well, what the fuck is it? Well, I was a disco singer, playing in a rock and roll band. You're definitely gonna get a strike.
So it wouldn't be the first time. Trust me on that. We always know that platforming you is just inviting trouble. It's courting trouble. So we were prepared for this episode to just get
So I'm going to put forth another crazy theory. I don't think that music evokes emotions.
Mm-hmm. You had said that earlier. So please.
I've made this point before, and it's a bit tongue in cheek, but it's meant to open up a dialogue about what we mean by music evoking emotions, right? Mm-hmm. So first of all, we have to talk about what music would be in that statement. Well, in that statement, we have to get rid of all vocal versions of music. So that means no songs with lyrics that are sung, or even choruses singing non-verbal sounds, because that's so evolutionarily significant, it would skew any experiment to study this, right? Mm-hmm. So now we have to limit music to non-vocal, non-verbal, non-melody, non-singing. So it's just instrumental music. Not that the voice isn't an instrument to all of you vocalists out there. For the purposes of this argument, let's assume that it's not. So this is chamber music, instrumental music. And so that's music operationally defined for the purpose of this. And what are emotions? Well, emotions are a very specific thing. Getting goosebumps isn't an emotional state. How are you feeling? Goosebumpy. Well, that might be the case, but that's not very informative, because goosebumps could be the consequence of many different kinds of emotions. For the purposes of emotion research, there are, if you believe in the distinct emotions theories, if you want to have a discussion about emotions for 2 hours, please let me know. According to the distinct emotions theory of emotions, there are distinct emotions, right? Such that happiness is different from sadness, is different from anger, is different from surprise, yada, yada. And the garden variety emotions are pretty much what I just described. Happiness, sadness, disgust, surprise, anger, and then a few others, right? It's still controversial. Music doesn't evoke disgust. Dissonance is frustrating and it hurts to hear, but it's not disgusting. There's nothing on your tongue triggering bitter or disgust, right? Disgust is that's not appropriate to music, right? You might not like it.
Yeah.
But that's very different. That's very different than disgust. You might be emotionally, you might be affectively responsive to it, and that's the point that I make. Emotions are a very specific affective response. If we just go up another level in the hierarchy, we will see that affective responses are really the umbrella term under which emotions fall under. Another category that falls under affective responses are aesthetic responses. I am a firm believer that music generates aesthetic responses, aesthetic affective responses, but not emotions, right? Because even though Music can replicate emotions. That's not the music that's causing you, right? It's the music referring to something in the real world. In order for music to evoke emotions, you would have to make an argument for the music itself and what the music intramusically is doing. Because if you make the mistake of using it as referential, like we use language, then you're talking about the referent. You're not talking about music anymore. That's why music that sounds emotional, evoking emotions, doesn't pass muster for my argument.
So one of the things I was gonna push back a bit, but I think you've actually addressed this. But I want to go through what I was thinking. What I was going to say was, okay, well, look, I mean, there are some pieces of music that actually do get me really emotional. I start to get very, very sad, and even to the point where I may cry. But what I find interesting about that is, is it the music, or is it somehow bringing me back to something else? One of the music, sometimes the music that I find actually the most, there's a lot of music I really do like. There are bands that I like. There's musicians I like, but I also am a very big fan of soundtracks to movies, to television shows. The soundtrack to Lost is one of my favorite soundtracks almost of all time. I love the music to it, and I'll play some of that music, and some of it just gets me almost crying. Now, Lost was a very confusing show, admittedly, but a very powerful show in a lot of ways. And I realize when I'm listening to the music, I'm not actually feeling something new. I'm not feeling an emotion that I'm getting. I'm remembering how I felt when I either saw, when I was connected to the show. I was either watching a piece of it, but it's that it's doing. Is that I think what you're talking about?
That's associative learning. Yeah, that's associative learning there. It's triggering a memory of something that was emotional, right? But it's not the music that's evoking emotions. It's the memory that's evoking the emotions. The music evoked the memory.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. I dislike agreeing with you, and it's a discomforting thing. There's a lot of dissonance, but
this is a little bit of a shitty argument. I don't think this is the best argument, but I think that it's the goal. Its purpose is to make you think, and if I can get you to agree just a little bit with kind of the points that I'm making, maybe it'll make you think differently about music, and that's where the fun begins. And the questions that are generated. The questions that are generated from that are the best. Now, here's the reason why I think this is the reason why people think music elicits emotions. It's because music, through aesthetic responses, creates tension that it eventually releases. And it can do this in a variety of ways. So, for instance, the first thing to do is to set an expectation. Okay, you know what I'm going to do. So anything I do to deviate is frustrating, but if I'm creative enough, I can make it satisfying. Now, let's go through the kinds of things that I can mess with to change your deviation and shape it. I can use notes that are not consonant. Right? I created tension and I released it. That's very satisfying. That's an aesthetic response. I can also use rhythm, either by slowing down or speeding up. Now, speeding up is going to be the obvious tension creator, but just listen to how slowing down can deviate from what you expect. Even slower. Right? So long as I land on that one, I can almost do anything in between. But if I wanted to create a lot of tension, I would just play many more fast notes. Now, with that in mind, you can also play with the rule of 3. Play it once the same way, play it twice the same way, third time deviate. Now, I'm going to take just a second to solo over this. I want you to listen to the motifs that I'm creating to deviate from, but first build an expectation for. So check it out. Little call response. All right, there you go. Just call response to myself. And if you want to make it more vocal, you just try to follow more vocal patterns. And the more ingrained you get in music, the better this gets. Now, my voice ain't so good, but I know what patterns I want to play. So if I sing while I'm playing, it's my finger patterns and gets me into like a relatable, like voice-like way of playing. Right, that sounded completely different than what I played before because I wasn't focusing on my hands. I was focusing on my voice. And my voice sucks, so it was more like the vocal thing that I was focusing on. So that's the end of that demonstration. So that's how musicians can create tension, release the tension through deviating from expectations creatively, having that arousing, satisfying release feeling. To me, that's what music provides. Again, I'm biased. I'm an improviser that likes the scene of playing with other musicians, using it as a way to communicate that is nonverbal, understanding each other, being in sync with each other. I like the community, social bonding component of music. And I think that being able to have an understanding of how to create and release tension effectively makes that social bonding effect so much more strong. So, and of course, you can tell like how like that is goosebumps thinking about it. Like I love that. Like when a band is hot, being in the audience, being in that band, even if there is no audience, man, it's the best feeling. Music is the best, right? Start and begin with Frank Zappa.
All right. Well, what I'm thinking we're going to do is I think we could definitely do like a part B, and we could certainly continue this. I think a lot of people have enjoyed it, but I think we'll sort of maybe wrap this up with any last questions anybody's got, and then I don't know how you feel about when we go to the credits. You just want to play over the credits there for us when we go to that.
Yes.
Perfect.
Let me get myself ready.
So I don't know if we got. Now we do have. I do apologize. There's a reasonably significant delay now between you and I, where we are, and the live chat. The live chat's about 45 seconds behind us. There was some lag at the beginning, a couple of issues that got it sorted, so we don't have a lag anymore. But we have that delay now, and then they have to catch up. So we'll give them a second to hit us with the questions, and then But listen, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this show. So thank you so much. And we've got a whole bunch of already. We don't have as many questions as comments just coming in, but yes, please.
I appreciate it. So if I may, I mentioned last night at both the beginning and the end of the hang that you were kind enough to be a guest on. So last night I did a hang called "Why Should I Trust You" on my channel, should you choose to go see it. But at the beginning and end of that, I explained that my goal was to create places where people could explore increasing quality of life. And if music doesn't increase quality of life, I don't know what does. So if this is a regular thing, like maybe once a month or whatever, or if this just becomes a theme that we can revisit over and over again, there is no definition of what music is. That's really the point I wanted to get across. I'm purposely going to be a bit of a devil's advocate to make you think about it, because if you think about it and you examine music just that tiny bit more, it is just a Pandora's box of awesomeness, right? You can listen to music on so many different levels, even if it's the same music that you grew up listening to. So I think that this is definitely a quality of life topic that I always want to promote. So just let me know when you want to talk about stuff like this, man.
Oh, well, perfect. Well, I think so. We have a number of comments. A lot of people very appreciative, said this is wonderful. Please make this a regular thing. I would definitely like to do more of this. And we're getting back to we're getting back to a lot of the kinds of shows that we used to do early on, and we're getting back to that, which I'm enjoying. Thank you, Reed, very much for the super chat. Thank you all who have contributed. Please do, if you like the show, hey, like and subscribe. That's the best way to help us out and make sure that you keep getting content like this. We do have a link to Christopher Maute's channel. Ryrez graciously just dropped that in the live chat, but we also do have it in the description. So go check him out. And I was on with him last night with Kyle Curtis, which was I thought a really great show. So it was why should I? Well, the topic was why should I trust you? And sure enough, I highlight in the center of the. Thanks. She's like, Nick, it was going to be about trust, so I figured who better to have on than Nick? Nobody trusts him. Thank you.
Who's more doubtful?
Who's?
I can't even finish that sentence.
Yeah, whose just appearance lacks credulity more than Nick. So,
I know somebody. I know a guy.
Okay, I can think of again, like and subscribe. That helps us out. But also, he is closing in on 1,000 subs. I don't think monetization is a big, huge goal for him. But you know what? 1,000 subs helps him out a lot. Anyway, go like and subscribe.
Like what you see. If you like what you see, is all.
All right.
So, am I going to be playing out?
You're going to be playing out. It's wasn't. Quite set up to do this, so just give me 1 second. I want to set it up. We may have to, it'll be a second or two as the audio switches over, but if you want to start playing now, you can do that, and then I will just say thank you all for watching, and catch up
I'm actually going to sing. This is a song I wrote. I met God. He gave me $1. I met his wife. She told me to call her. She thought that I could make her scream and holler, 'cause she got tired of praising the Father. 'Cause I'm solid, I'm out of sight. Give me love, and I will show enough do you right. Solid, well, I'm out of sight. Give me your love.
love, and I will sure enough do you right. I fought with Superman, and boy was he a Superman. He came at me with all his might until I hit him with my kryptonite. He didn't understand.